Hello, hello. How are you all? So, I wanted to come on to begin to talk about our first subject, our first assignment, and what we'll be tackling first. I put much prayer and thought into this. I initially was not going to uh, do it today, and then I thought about coming on Saturday, but then it's like, no, let me just let this marinate to make sure that this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So that's why I didn't come on Saturday. But I thank you in advance for watching. Thank you for viewing. And let's get into it. So one of the areas that I believe that we as leaders, we as ministers, we as disciple makers, we as disciples need to begin to prepare ourselves or fully equipped ourselves even more so in the area of being able to deal with the effects of destruction and the effects of death. And, as a unit, as a church, as an organism in Christendom, we all know that, and even just being human, we know that at one point we're going to pass away, correct? We know that at one point we're going to transition from one life into the next. We already know that death is inevitable. It's not something that we can avoid. It's not something that we can even prevent. No one lives forever on this earth. We live eternally forever, but we do not live on this earth forever. So in that, there is an underlying knowing that it's something that we're always going to have to deal with. And so as a result of us being something that we will always have to deal with as ministers and as leaders and, as a unit, we need to be able to do an effective job with ministering to this area properly. And in ministering to it properly, it actually takes a bit of a process, because if we're really honest and we're really true about it, during this time, just this time frame, we ourselves are experiencing grief. We ourselves are experiencing the side effects of death and destruction. And this is a global thing. This is not just something that just happening in one region, in one area, in one ethnicity, in one race, in one culture, in one community. This is happening in every community that we know of. So how do we deal with this? And the hard part for us is that we don't really talk about it, but a lot of times we're hurting just as much as the people that we're ministering to are hurting. They're hurting and we're hurting too. We're trying to encourage them, but we need somebody to encourage us at the same time. And so how do we deal with this? How do we come together? How do we get to a place to where we can minister to the grief of those who are dealing with this pain as a result of what's going on in the world, as a result of, what's been going on. Now, let's be clear. When I speak of grief, I'm not speaking just about losing a loved one, even though that is an aspect of it. Hey, Lisa, I'm not speaking of just losing a loved one. Grief comes in many different shapes, many different forms. You can lose a home and grieve over that home. You can lose a dog and grieve over that dog. You can lose a job. You can lose a relationship. A lot of times we don't even realize that people going through divorce, that period, that lowliness, that is a derivative of grief as well. And so we need to be able to effectively deal with that. We need to be able to effectively help people through that process of grief while allowing them to grieve, because grieving is okay. It is okay to grieve, right? We all know that. We all know that there's a time to laugh, there's a time to cry, right? There's a time to mourn. But we don't want to allow that grief to get to beyond a certain point, right? We don't want it to get into the spirit of grief, which means it becomes a stronghold for them. It becomes a thing that then shifts them into depression and actually shifts them into even other areas, because grief, it not only affects us in our hearts, but it affects us mentally as well. It can stimulate and open the door for many other mental things that people are dealing with today. Believe it or not, there are some types of arrested development that stimulates from grief for those who have lost as children. It can arrest their development in some areas. Not only that, grief can kind of shift your mind in a way to where you cut yourself off from the reality of being able to love again, from the ability to be able to open yourself up again, or to try again, or to reach for another person again, or to allow your heart to open up. So we really, 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 as a unit, as people of God, we really need to understand and learn how do we minister to those that are grieving while we're grieving. Because see, the point that I wanted to bring out is we're faking the funk to a degree, because we're not really truly admitting the fact that the entire world is grieving to a degree. And the entire world, that includes us. So even though we are strong and we have the power of God, we have the grace of God on our lives, we still feel that grief. You know what I'm saying? We still feel that hurt. We're still human. Even though we walk in a certain level of supernaturalness, because the grace of God is supernatural, especially when He gives you peace that surpasses all understanding, that guards your heart and your mind. That guarding of your heart is a guarding of the spirit of grief as well. We're going to get into all of these things, but when God is guarding your heart, He's not guarding it so that others can't come into it. He's guarding it so that it doesn't become tainted by wrong emotions. He's guarding it so that it doesn't become misconstrued, so it doesn't get into bitterness and your heart doesn't become hardened. But anyway, back to grief, and back to us ministering to that and preparing ourselves as leaders to be able to do that, because really and truly the world needs us. Our people need us. And if we're going to pastor effectively, if we're going to be effective evangelists, if we're going to be effective apostles, effective ministers, effective teachers during this next season, and for a couple seasons after that, we need to become efficient in dealing with grief. We need to become very efficient and know how to handle those sensitive areas and learn how to do that. So, how do we do that? Well, y'all, that's what we're going to be getting into over these next couple of weeks. I'm going to be doing a series. I pray you're able to watch it. I pray that it blesses you. But I'm going to do a series on how to deal with this. And let's get this out here already. I don't have all the answers. I really don't. But I do know what God has given me about this and how to deal with this and how to eventually get yourself into a place of joy. Okay? And how to not just get yourself into a place of joy, but how to help others get into that realm of joy continuously. But my concern is for you, because I want to encourage you, because it is hard to carry those who are grieving while you yourself are grieving. And, y'all, let's be honest. As ministers, we are grieving. We have pastors who have lost their church. We have pastors who have lost their ministries. We're having to bury people that we minister to on I'm not going to say a consistent basis, because I don't want to speak that, but we're having these people who we've labored for, these people who we have loved on, these people who we have watched their families grow. We have watched their families grow. We've seen them, God, do amazing things in their lives. We've seen, all kinds of stuff. We've done life with the people that we're having to put in the ground. And that's a hurtful thing. That's a hurtful thing. And no one takes time to really minister to the ministers. So that is my aim today. And for these next couple of series. So if you know any other ministers who may benefit from this, you're welcome to invite them to the group. You're welcome to invite them into this conversation. It's going to be a teaching. It's going to be a conversation. And then we're going to apply what we're conversing about. Okay? And it's not going to be 100% spiritual, because I believe that to effectively deal with the spirit of grief as ministers, as pastors, as leaders, as disciples, as disciple makers, we need to get into the counseling aspect of it as well. And the counseling aspect of it is natural and spiritual. So we're going to have to touch to make it completely balanced. We don't want to be lopsided in this thing, because we can give people, we can give them a worship song. Oh, when you're feeling down and when you're feeling hurt, just sing this worship song. Or when you're dealing with grief, you're starting to remember your loved one. Oh, just pray. Everything will be all right. No, that ain't, they're not going to pray all day. Period. They're not going to pray all day. They're not going to be listening to worship songs all day. Not when you're missing. There's a piece of your heart that has been ripped out of you. And then there are some people who have lost more than one family member at the same time. So there has to be an answer. There has to be a true balm in Gilead. And so I'm praying that through this study that we're going to get ready to go into, I pray that it's going to give us the tools so that we can minister to this thing. But I'm trying to put the cart before the horse, because even though we're going to be dealing with grief, we're going to lead up into death and destruction, and how it is being released into our nation and our country, and then how we deal with it. How do we deal with it? Because it really and truly, I believe, and I'm just going to say this, I believe that we as a body, we have not taken authority over the spirit effectively. We have not come against this particular evil, and I think it's because we didn't know in the right way, and I also think because we've been doing religion so much that we've forgotten how to do God. And so we're going to start off with the end result, which is the little thing, was really and truly these side effects, these side symptoms like grief and mental instability, these panic attacks, these anxiety attacks, the things that shift into there being a chemical imbalance in the minds of people with being bipolar and all other types of areas. It stems from somewhere. It's a cause and effect. So we're going to be diving into that very deeply, very heavily. Hey, Smiles. And so that's going to be our aim, okay, guys? So just be praying. It's going to be, I don't know how long this series is going to be, but I really would like for you guys to be praying and begin to invite others so that they can benefit, to this. And this not only helps us as a ministry, it helps us minister as ministers, but it's going to also help us in our families. Because truth be told, we have family members that are suffering. We have relatives that are suffering with us. So we're all in this pot together. So let's all encourage each other together. Amen. Amen. So I hope to see you when we start this series. I'll be posting when we're going to start it so that we all can at least know. Even I'm going to always leave it up for you to be able to watch the replays. But just be in prayer, pray that God speaks and he moves and he does what he needs to do. Because y'all, we have got to deal with this. We can't just keep having funeral services, preaching eulogies that don't bring deliverance, preaching eulogies that don't bring healing, ministering eulogies that, just kind of brush over what people are really going through, or preaching eulogies that do the guilt trip of, you need to be saved. They know they need to be saved. But let's deal with the real issue. Let's deal with the effects of how do you handle missing this person who has been a part of your life for so long? How do you handle this part of your heart no longer being there? How do you deal with picking up the phone to call this person and realizing, man, they're not here? How do you really deal with that? How do we minister to that part of them? We can sing and pray and all that other kind of stuff, but how do we get to that? You roll over and you reach for your husband and he's not there. You're in the house, you yell out your child's name and they're no longer there. That's the type of grief we need to be ministering to. That's really what's going to heal the nations. And we need to begin to be healers of the nations, of the people that we deal with. And even ourselves. Because as ministers, like I said again, we're hurting too. So I want to help you deal with that. Okay? I love y'all. And until next time, just be in prayer and be blessed.